The grand palace of the Zalari Empire glittered like a star. Its walls were made of silver stone that shimmered with blue light. Alien nobles filled the hall, wearing shining armor and rich robes. Their tall, elegant bodies reflected pride. They looked toward the golden throne where their queen Xylera stood, strong, beautiful, and feared. Today was her wedding day. But the hall was filled with whispers and hidden laughter, because the one she was marrying was not one of their kind. He was human. Captain Ryan Hale stood at the other end of the hall, dressed in the dark blue uniform of the Terran Confederation. Compared to the tall, powerful Zalari, he looked small. His skin was pale, his build modest, and his eyes calm but sharp. The alien nobles looked at him like he was a fragile creature brought from a zoo. He looked so weak. One noble whispered, "How can such a soft being protect our queen?" Said another, "Humans are barely stronger than children." A third added with a cruel smile. Xylera heard their words but said nothing. She had agreed to this marriage not for love, but for peace. The Terran Confederation had become powerful and unpredictable. Their fleets had grown fast, their influence spreading across many sectors. To keep balance, the queen accepted an alliance, sealed by marriage. Still, she could not understand why this human man looked so calm. No anger, no fear, no pride, only quiet confidence. The ceremony began. As the ancient songs of Zalari echoed through the hall, Xylera stepped forward in her silver crown. Ryan approached her with steady steps. He didn't stumble under the heavy gaze of thousands of alien eyes. When he stopped before her, he simply said, "I promise peace, loyalty, and truth for both our people." His voice was not loud, but it carried strength. For a brief moment, Xylera's golden eyes met his gray ones. Something inside her paused. His words sounded simple, but there was no weakness in them. The ceremony ended. The crowd bowed, some in respect, others in mockery. Later, in the royal chamber, Xylera sat alone. The night sky outside showed endless stars. She thought about the strange human now sharing her palace. She had studied humans before, creatures from a harsh blue world known for stubbornness and survival. But she never understood them fully. They had soft bodies, short lives, and no great weapons in their own flesh. Yet they built machines that could tear planets apart. Her thoughts were broken by a voice. Majesty. Ryan stood by the doorway, polite but firm. He looked tired from the long day but still carried himself straight. "You may speak," she said coldly. "I only wanted to thank you for accepting this union," he said. "I know it wasn't easy." "You know nothing of my people," Xylera replied. "Among the Zalari, strength decides worth. Many here see you as unworthy." "I understand," Ryan said softly. "Humans often face that too." That answer surprised her. "You, from a world like Earth?" He smiled slightly. "Yes, even among ourselves we fight to prove who deserves to stand tall. But strength comes in many forms, Queen Xylera. You'll see." He bowed lightly and turned to leave. His calm tone unsettled her more than insults ever could. Days passed. The palace was full of strange tension. The nobles kept testing the human, hoping to humiliate him. During a feast, a Zalari general challenged Ryan to lift a ceremonial sword that weighed twice as much as a man. Ryan tried once, then smiled and said, "You win this one. I'll find a contest that suits me." Laughter filled the hall. The aliens enjoyed his defeat. But Ryan never looked angry. Instead, he poured a drink for the general and said, "Maybe next time we'll see who can last longer without giving up." The queen watched silently. There was no fear in him, no shame, just patience. Late one night, unable to sleep, Xylera decided to check the royal gravity chamber, a massive room where Zalari warriors trained under triple gravity. She entered quietly. What she saw made her stop. Ryan was inside, alone, without armor. The gravity was set at full Zalari strength. Every movement looked painful. His body trembled, sweat covering his face. He tried to lift a training bar far heavier than any human could manage. Again and again he failed, yet he didn't stop. She watched him fall, get up, and try again, over and over. After nearly an hour, he finally managed to lift the bar for a few seconds before it fell with a crash. He sat on the floor, breathing hard. His hands bled slightly, but there was a smile on his lips, not of pride, but of satisfaction. Xylera stepped forward. "You could die doing that," she said sharply. Ryan looked up, startled but calm. "Maybe," he replied. "But humans don't stop just because something is hard." Why? You gain nothing by this struggle? He wiped his face with a towel. Because I need to understand your people's strength. And maybe show you ours. The queen crossed her arms. Your body is weaker. Your reflexes slower. Your kind cannot survive our trials. Ryan stood slowly, wincing but still straight. You're right, he said. But we survive worse. Our world never forgave weakness. Every storm, every hunger, every war. We learn to adapt, not overpower. We fall, but we rise again. That's what we're good at. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Xylera looked at the human before her, bruised, tired, yet standing tall. There was no arrogance in his words, only truth. Something inside her, something she didn't show even to her council, began to stir. Curiosity and respect. Rest, Captain, she finally said. You will need your strength, he nodded. Always do. When she left the chamber, she didn't realize she was smiling slightly. The next day, Ryan joined her in a council meeting. Solari generals presented reports of growing tension along the border with the Vorketh Dominion, an aggressive alien race. Ryan listened quietly, asking sharp questions about tactics and logistics. Some generals laughed at his primitive suggestions, but the Queen noticed his plans were clever, simple yet effective. After the meeting, she found him studying the holographic map of the border zones. You seem to know much about war, she said. I've seen enough of it, he answered. Humans fought each other for centuries before we reached the stars. We learned things the hard way. You believe your experience can guide an empire? She asked with mild amusement. He looked at her, serious now. I believe no empire is too great to learn something new. She didn't respond, but his words stayed in her mind. That night, as Xylera sat by the balcony of her private chamber, she looked at the stars, each one home to millions of lives. Somewhere among them was Earth, the human world she barely understood. Her people called humans unpredictable, emotional, and reckless. Yet the man she married showed none of those traits. Instead, he showed something far more dangerous, patience mixed with quiet determination. She began to wonder if peace was truly the only reason for their marriage, or if fate had something else planned. Suddenly, a bright light flashed across the sky, a messenger drone entering orbit. It brought urgent news. An enemy fleet was gathering near the Zalari border. The Queen frowned. War was coming sooner than expected. Down below in his chamber, Ryan looked at the same message on his datapad. His eyes hardened, and for the first time, his calm voice turned into a whisper meant only for himself. So it begins. Later, when the palace grew quiet, Xylera found herself walking once more to the training chamber. She didn't know why. Perhaps she wanted to see if the human was still awake. And he was. He was training again, moving through gravity like it was his enemy. His hands wrapped in bandages, his expression focused. This time when she entered, he looked up and smiled faintly. Can't sleep? He asked. Neither can you, she replied. You train as if war starts tomorrow. Because it might, he said simply. She studied him closely. The human's strength wasn't in his muscles. It was in his will. He trained not to impress anyone, but to prepare for something no one else could see yet. For the first time since their wedding, Xylera felt uneasy. Not because of fear, but because she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, this human would prove stronger than any of her kind. The palace of the Zalari Empire no longer felt peaceful. Every corridor buzzed with nervous voices. Messengers ran between towers carrying reports from the border. The Vorketh Dominion, a brutal alien empire known for conquest, was preparing for war. Queen Xylera sat in her war council chamber, surrounded by generals in silver armor. Holographic maps floated in the air, showing red enemy fleets moving closer each hour. The tension was heavy. At the far end of the table stood Captain Ryan Hale, her human husband. His calm face was unreadable, his hands behind his back. Many Zalari officers still didn't take him seriously. To them, he was just a symbol of peace, not a warrior. Majesty, said General Varen, bowing deeply. The Vorketh fleet outnumbers us 2-1. But if we strike first, we can destroy their forward bases. Xylera nodded slightly. And our losses? Varen hesitated. Significant. But acceptable. Ryan raised a hand quietly. With respect, Queen Xylera, he said, striking first might make us look desperate. The Dominion thrives on provoking fear. They want us to panic. Several generals turned toward him with disapproval. You dare question our strategy, human? One hissed. Ryan didn't react. I question anything that risks lives for pride. You can win a battle and still lose the war. Do you think your human experience gives you the right to lecture warriors who fought for centuries? Sneered another. Ryan looked at the holographic map again, speaking evenly. On Earth, we fought wars for thousands of years. The ones who lasted were not the strongest, but the ones who adapted. The Vorketh expect you to attack first. That's why they're baiting you. The room went silent. Queen Xylera watched him closely. His tone wasn't arrogant. It was logical, confident. Even the proud generals couldn't find an easy answer. Finally, Xylera spoke. What do you suggest, Captain? Ryan pointed to a faint blue line on the map, a hidden route through a dust nebula. We send small recon teams here. Let them believe our defenses are weak. When they move in, we hit their supply ships from behind. No empire can fight without fuel. The generals exchanged looks. It was a simple but dangerous plan. Clever in a way they didn't expect from a weak human. Xylera nodded slowly. Approved. You will lead the recon teams yourself. A murmur filled the room. A human leading Zalari soldiers? Unthinkable. Ryan bowed slightly. Understood, Majesty. That night the Queen stood by her balcony watching the city lights below. Her empire had never faced such a threat, yet instead of fear she felt a strange calm, because the human she had once doubted now stood ready to protect her people. She looked up as the sound of boots approached. Ryan entered quietly wearing light combat armor. You're leaving already? She asked. Yes, he said. The nebula will hide our movement, but we have to go before dawn. You could send someone else. I could, Ryan replied. But I won't ask others to take a risk I won't take myself. She wanted to argue but didn't. Instead, she said softly, you are not like other humans I've met. He smiled faintly. I get that a lot. The next day, Ryan's small strike group left the palace. His team included Zalari soldiers, tall, proud warriors who clearly doubted him. The captain of the team, Sirach, whispered to his partner, We're being led by a fragile creature from a backwater planet. If we die, it'll be because of his foolish orders. Ryan overheard but didn't respond. He focused on his datapad, reviewing the star charts. As the ships entered the dust nebula, visibility dropped. The glowing clouds turned everything orange and red. The crew grew uneasy. It was easy to get lost here, and harder to survive if ambushed. Hours passed in silence until sensors beeped. Vorketh scout ships, small but dangerous, appeared on radar. Enemy ships approaching, shouted Sirach. Stay calm, Ryan said firmly. Don't fire. Let them come closer. What? Are you insane? Another soldier shouted. They'll see us. Ryan's eyes stayed on the screen. They already have. At that moment, 3 enemy fighters swooped in. The Zalari soldiers prepared to fire, but Ryan gave a quick command. Cut engines. Go dark. The ships went silent. The humans called this tactic ghost mode. The enemies flew past, confused by the sudden sensor loss. Ryan waited, then whispered, Now. All weapons fired at once. The enemy scouts exploded before they could send a signal. The Zalari soldiers looked at each other in disbelief. Sirach's eyes widened. That actually worked, Ryan smiled slightly. We humans call it playing dead. It saves lives. Hours later, the recon group reached the supply fleet of the Vorketh Dominion. It was massive. Fuel ships, cargo carriers, repair stations. Ryan studied it carefully. They're using heavy escorts. But their refueling lines are exposed. Sirach frowned. You plan to attack that alone? Not attack, Ryan said. Distract. He laid out his plan, using drones with fake human signatures to confuse the enemy sensors. While the Vorketh chased the phantom ships, Ryan's team would plant mines on their fuel lines. The plan sounded impossible. Yet as the operation began, everything went perfectly. Explosions shook the void. Fire spread through the enemy fleet. Fuel tanks burst like suns. Within minutes, the entire Vorketh supply line was destroyed. Ryan gave the order to retreat. As his small ships raced away, he looked out the window and whispered, One small victory. Many more to come. Back at the Zalari Palace, Queen Xylera received the news. The enemy's supply fleet is gone, her advisor said in shock. Destroyed by the humans team. The council chamber filled with noise. Some generals were angry, others astonished. One shouted, He acted without permission. Azilera stood and silenced them with a glance. He acted with intelligence, she said. He saved thousands of lives today. When Ryan returned to the palace, tired but alive, the queen met him in the throne hall. She looked down from her golden seat and said, "Captain Ryan Hale of Earth, you have done what even our best failed to do." "I only did what needed to be done," Ryan said humbly. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some still refused to believe a human had achieved such a feat. But Xylera's gaze held pride. "Still," she said, stepping closer, "your actions have changed how my people see you." He raised an eyebrow. "For better or worse?" Her lips curved slightly. "For better, I think." That evening, the palace held a quiet celebration. Soldiers and nobles gathered, drinking the sweet blue wine of the Zalari. Ryan stood in a corner, not drinking, just watching. He never liked attention. Sirach approached him. The same soldier who once mocked him now saluted. "Captain," he said, "I was wrong about you. You fought like a Zalari, maybe even better." Ryan smiled. "Don't be too kind. I just hate losing." Xylera overheard the words from a distance. She couldn't help but smile. Something about his simplicity was disarming. He didn't crave praise, power, or fear. He only wanted to do what was right, but deep down she knew something. The Vorketh would not forgive this defeat. They would come harder next time. Later that night, the queen found Ryan in the garden of crystal trees. The stars shone brightly above. He was sitting quietly looking at the glowing leaves. "You should rest," she said. He looked up. "Can't, I'm thinking about what comes next." "You truly believe they will attack again?" "Yes," Ryan said softly. "They've lost fuel and supplies. The only way for them to save face is to hit us fast before we rebuild. Pride drives them, like it drives many empires." Xylera stood beside him. "You understand war too well for a man of peace." "Because peace doesn't last unless someone protects it," Ryan replied. "On Earth we learned that the hard way." She looked at him quietly for a long time. Then almost in a whisper she said, "My people once called humans weak." "And now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Now I'm not so sure." A soft silence followed. The night wind moved gently through the glowing trees. The next morning alarms rang through the palace. "Emergency! The Vorketh fleet is attacking the outer colonies." Ryan was already dressed when the guards came to find him. He met the queen in the war chamber. "They came faster than we expected," she said, voice calm but cold. Ryan looked at the map. "They're hitting 3 worlds at once. Classic strategy, divide and conquer. What do you propose?" He studied the data carefully, then pointed at a vulnerable point in their formation. "Here, we strike their command carrier. Cut off the head, the rest will scatter." The generals objected immediately. "Impossible." "Too dangerous." Ryan turned to the queen. "You asked for a chance to see what humans can do. This is it." She looked at him, seeing the same quiet fire she saw that night in the gravity chamber. Something told her to trust him. "Very well," she said. "You'll have command of the strike force." He bowed slightly. "Then let's make history." As the fleet prepared to depart, Queen Xylera watched from her tower. The human ship, smaller but faster, led the formation. For a moment she felt a strange fear, and not of war, but of losing him. When Ryan's voice came through the communicator, it was calm as ever. "Majesty, if this works, your people will see that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just refuses to break." Xylera's heart beat faster. "Return alive, Ryan Hale," she said quietly. "That is an order." He smiled faintly. "Yes, my queen." The transmission ended. His ship vanished into the stars, leaving her staring into the sky, uncertain whether she had sent a soldier or something much more powerful. The void of space stretched endlessly before the Zalari fleet. Stars sparkled cold and distant, silent witnesses to the coming battle. In the center of the fleet, Captain Ryan Hale's small human-led strike group moved with calm precision. Despite being outnumbered, they carried something the alien soldiers could not yet understand: strategy built on flexibility, creativity, and sheer human will. Zalari soldiers, tall and proud, muttered among themselves. Many had trained their whole lives to fight according to centuries-old doctrines. A human was now leading them. Some still thought him weak. Ryan studied the sensor displays carefully. The Vorketh Dominion fleet had more than 50 warships. Massive, heavily armed, and organized in a rigid formation. Traditional attacks would fail. They had strength, yes, but humans had something else. Listen carefully, Ryan said, voice calm and clear. They rely on predictability. Their formation is strong but slow to change. We will not attack them head-on. We will confuse them, divide them, and strike at the weak points. The Zalari soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Serac, the same captain who had once mocked Ryan, muttered under his breath, "We'll die before this plan works." Ryan heard him. He smiled faintly. "Then you'll die fighting smart instead of foolishly. Trust me." Hours later, the battle began. Ryan's fleet slipped between asteroid fields and glowing nebulae. Sensors flickered. Vorketh scouts approached, expecting an easy fight. Ryan used a tactic unknown to the Zalari, decoys and false signals. Small drones projected human signatures, drawing the scouts away from the real ships. The Vorketh fired blindly at shadows. The Zalari soldiers were stunned. "How?" one whispered. Ryan didn't answer. He focused on the real target, the command ship of the enemy fleet. He guided the smaller, faster human ships through hidden channels in the nebula. Every movement was precise, every maneuver calculated. When the command ship came into view, Ryan acted. "Prepare boarding drones," he said. "We hit them before they even realize we're here." The alien soldiers' jaws dropped. "Boarding drones against that ship, it will crush them." Ryan shook his head. "Not if we strike at the right time." As the drones surged toward the Vorketh carrier, the enemy fleet scrambled. Vorketh officers barked orders, but their formations were too rigid. They could not adapt fast enough to the sudden confusion. Inside the command carrier, Ryan's team prepared for the final move. They bypassed heavy doors, using their small size and clever tools. Zalari soldiers would have brute strength, but humans could think quickly, improvise, and use the environment to their advantage. Minutes later, the drones detonated explosives along the carrier's fuel lines and engine ports. Fires erupted. Alarms screamed, and the massive ship was crippled within moments. The Vorketh fleet faltered. The smaller ships scattered, unsure where to focus. Ryan's voice came over the fleet communicator. "Focus on the stragglers. Cut off escape routes. Do not waste time on their heavy ships. They are useless without fuel." Back at the Zalari palace, Queen Xylera watched the battle unfold on a holographic screen. Her heart raced. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, and outmatched. Yet here was Ryan, commanding a fleet, outsmarting the greatest warriors she had ever known. She felt a strange mix of awe and fear. "Impossible," she whispered. "How can one human do this?" Her advisor leaned close. "Majesty, he is clever, but even cleverness cannot withstand numbers." Xylera shook her head. "He does not fight like a Zalari, and that is why he will win." The battle raged for hours. Ryan's strategy worked flawlessly. Enemy ships were drawn into traps, destroyed or forced to retreat. His small fleet moved like shadows, striking, retreating, and striking again. Serac, once skeptical, could no longer hide his amazement. "Captain, you've turned chaos into victory." Ryan smiled faintly. "We humans call it using our brains when our bodies aren't enough." The Queen felt her chest tighten. For the first time, she realized that the true strength of humanity wasn't muscle or armor. It was the mind, the spirit, the refusal to surrender no matter how impossible the odds. During the final stage of the battle, Ryan's ship faced the enemy's last heavy cruiser. Their weapons were powerful enough to destroy his ship with a single blast. The Zalari officers urged retreat. Ryan shook his head. "If we retreat now, the Dominion will regroup. We strike or they destroy everything in their path." The cruiser fired. Shields flared. Ryan's ship rocked violently, alarms screaming. He maneuvered skillfully, dodging with calculated precision. Then he ordered the unexpected, a direct boarding strike. Small human and Zalari soldiers were launched in zero-gravity pods, moving silently toward the enemy ship's hull. Inside the cruiser, chaos erupted. Vorketh soldiers were unprepared for close-quarters combat in zero gravity. Humans and Zalari moved together, using coordinated strikes. Ryan himself led a small team, moving through corridors with calm precision, disabling engines and weapons. Hours later, the cruiser was captured. Its remaining forces surrendered. The Vorketh fleet, seeing their command ship lost and their supplies destroyed, began a hasty retreat. Ryan's fleet had done the impossible. Outnumbered 50-1, they had turned defeat into total victory. Back in the palace, the Queen could hardly breathe. She stared at the holoscreen, watching Ryan's ship return to the fleet. The aliens in her court whispered in disbelief. A human? He actually defeated them all? Yes, she said softly. And not just by fighting. He used his mind, his strategy, his heart. He is more than any warrior I have ever known. Her advisors and generals could only stare. Some bowed in reluctant respect. Others fumed at the humiliation. But Xylera felt something else: pride, awe, and a strange warmth. Later, Ryan returned to the palace, battered but alive. His uniform was torn, a few scratches marked his face, but his eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. Zalari soldiers approached to salute him, some with respect, some with disbelief. Sirac, once mocking, stood before him. Captain, I was wrong. You fought better than any Zalari general I have seen. Ryan shook his head. I only did what I had to. Victory is not about glory. It's about protecting lives. The Queen watched silently, feeling an emotion she rarely admitted. Admiration mixed with something deeper. You have changed the outcome of this war, she said, stepping closer. And perhaps you have changed my people's view of humans. Ryan looked at her. I didn't do it for that, Majesty. I did it because it was the right thing. Humans survive not because we are the strongest, but because we never give up. I hope that is enough for your people to understand. The evening was quiet. The Queen found Ryan alone in the palace garden, under the glowing crystal trees. Stars shone bright above. You were supposed to be weak, she said softly. Ryan smiled faintly, eyes on the sky. That's what everyone thinks, until they see what humans do when someone they care for is in danger. Xylera's heart skipped. For the first time, she realized that human strength was not in size, claws, or armor. It was in courage, spirit, and the will to act when others hesitate. The Queen took a deep breath. You have proven much more than I imagined, Ryan Hale. And you, he said quietly, have proven that even the proudest empires can learn something new. They stood together silently, watching the stars. The war was not over. The Vorketh would return. But for the first time, Xylera felt hope. Not just for victory, but for understanding that the human spirit could inspire even the greatest alien civilizations. In the silent garden, the Queen realized something she could not deny. Her husband, the human she had once doubted, was unlike any creature she had ever known. And perhaps that was exactly what her people needed. The galaxy was quiet for only a few hours. Victory had been claimed in the previous battle, but the Vorketh Dominion would not forgive humiliation. Their fleets were larger, more aggressive, and more ruthless than before. Queen Xylera stood on the balcony of her palace overlooking the capital planet. Her mind raced. Even with Ryan's incredible leadership, the Vorketh were clever. They would strike again, this time with everything they had. Majesty, an advisor said nervously, we must prepare for full invasion. Our cities, our fleets, they will be destroyed. Xylera shook her head. No, she said firmly. Captain Ryan has shown us another way. We will fight and survive. Yet deep inside, she feared what would happen when the Dominion returned. On the edge of Zalari space, Ryan's fleet prepared for the worst. His ship, the Horizon, was battered from the previous battle, yet he walked calmly among the crew. His human team worked quickly, repairing systems, checking weapons, and preparing drones. Sirac approached him, voice low. Captain? They outnumber us 10-1. Even your strategy may fail. Ryan glanced at the fleet beyond the nebula. Numbers mean little when you understand your enemy. Vorketh fight like machines. They follow orders blindly. That is where we strike. But if we fail, Serac started. Ryan placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we fail trying. I've seen humans survive worse odds than this. Fear does not decide the outcome. Action does. The Zalari soldiers looked at him with awe. Their human captain was not just brave, and he was unshakable. The Vorketh arrived without warning. Hundreds of ships appeared through the haze of a gas cloud, their weapons glowing red. Their flagship, larger than anything in the Zalari fleet, led the charge. "Everyone, brace for impact," shouted a Zalari officer. Ryan remained calm. He studied the sensors carefully, noting gaps in the enemy formation. "Divide and confuse them," he ordered. "Use the nebula for cover. Draw their attention to the drones. Strike the weak points. Stay alive." The battle began. Explosions lit the void. Shields flared, metal groaned, and fire swept across the fleet. Yet, despite his strategy, Ryan's ship was hit repeatedly. One blast tore through the side of the horizon, sending alarms blaring. "Shields at 40%. A technician yelled. Ryan's voice was steady. "Keep firing drones. I'll handle this." Suddenly, a missile hit close to the bridge. Ryan was thrown to the floor, his leg pinned under a console. Smoke filled the room. The crew panicked, but he gritted his teeth. Using sheer strength and determination, he freed himself, ignoring the pain, and continued issuing orders. "Deploy boarding pods," he shouted. "Hit their engine core." "Disable them or we all die!" The Zalari soldiers hesitated, afraid of boarding such a massive ship. Ryan turned, looking each one in the eye. "You will either fight and live, or hesitate and die. Choice is yours." One by one, they nodded, inspired by his courage. They launched pods into the enemy ship. Inside the Vorketh flagship, chaos erupted. Humans and Zalari soldiers moved with unmatched coordination, striking in ways the enemy could not predict. Ryan led the strike team himself, climbing through smoke-filled corridors, dodging blasts and disabling weapons. His body ached. Cuts ran down his arms, and one leg was wounded. Yet he moved with relentless determination. Outside, the Zalari fleet watched in awe as the Vorketh flagship slowed, then stopped completely. Their weapons went offline. Serac breathed heavily. He did it. Against all odds, he did it. Ryan, bleeding and exhausted, sent the signal to retreat. The enemy ships scattered, leaderless and disorganized. Victory was hard-earned, but complete. Back on the palace planet, Queen Xylera received the news. She had watched the entire battle from the strategic command deck. Her eyes were wide with disbelief and admiration. They won?" asked an officer. Xylera nodded, her voice steady but filled with awe. "Not just won, but survived. Against impossible odds, Captain Ryan Hale led our fleet to victory." Her advisors looked at her skeptically. "A human? He risked everything for us. But he is only one man. What if the next attack is stronger?" Xylera's gaze hardened. "Then we will follow him. He has shown us what strength truly means." The next day, the Queen insisted on visiting Ryan personally. She found him in the medical bay, still sore and bandaged, yet speaking calmly with his crew. "Majesty," Ryan said, standing to bow, "I did what was necessary." "You did more than that," Xylera replied softly. She studied him carefully. "You risked your life for my people, for my empire." Ryan shook his head. "I did what any human would do for someone they care about. The universe has always tested us, Queen Xylera. We survive because we refuse to quit." Her heart pounded. For the first time, she saw the truth behind the stories of human resilience. These beings were fragile in body, yes, but unstoppable in spirit. "You are extraordinary," she whispered. Ryan smiled faintly. "I do not seek praise, only to do what is right." Later, the Queen stood in her private garden under the glowing crystal trees. She reflected on the battle, on the courage she had witnessed, and on the man who had changed her perception of humanity. She thought about the Vorketh. They would not give up. They would strike again, stronger and smarter. Yet she no longer feared them. She feared only one thing, the possibility of losing Ryan Hale. Suddenly, a warning alarm sounded. Another fleet had entered Zalari space, and this time larger than the last. Ryan's voice came over the communicator. "Queen Xylera, this is the real test. The Vorketh are here to finish what they started." The Queen's heart tightened. "Then we fight," she said. "And we will survive, together." The battle that followed was unlike any before. Ryan led the fleet with precision, inspiring both humans and Zalari alike. They moved as one, striking, retreating, and striking again. The Vorketh were relentless, but they were no match for strategy combined with determination. At one point, Ryan's flagship was surrounded. Shields were down. Engines failing. The enemy seemed certain victory was theirs, yet Ryan refused to surrender. Using a combination of clever tactics, improvised weapons, and sheer courage, he managed to escape the trap. His fleet rallied around him, emboldened by his example. Meanwhile, Queen Xylera watched from orbit. She felt a mix of fear and pride. Every move Ryan made reminded her that true strength was not in size or armor, but in courage, in intelligence, and in the refusal to yield. As the battle drew to a close, the Vorketh fleet, battered and leaderless, began to retreat. Ryan's victory was complete, but it had come at a cost. His ships were damaged, his soldiers exhausted, and he himself bore injuries that would have felled most Zalari warriors. The Queen ordered shuttles to meet him immediately. She needed to see him alive. She needed to witness the strength she had begun to admire, the human spirit made flesh. When Ryan finally returned, he was carried on a stretcher into the palace. Bloodied, bruised, and exhausted, he smiled faintly as the Queen approached. "You were supposed to be weak," she whispered. Ryan shook his head, pain evident in his voice. "That's what everyone thinks, until they see what humans do when they refuse to give up." Xylera's eyes glistened. She reached out, taking his hand. For the first time, she realized that the universe's strongest warriors did not need claws, armor, or alien strength. They only needed a heart that refused to surrender. The galaxy burned. The Vorketh Dominion had gathered their final armada, the largest in recorded history. Thousands of ships moved like a dark storm through space, their weapons glowing red, ready to end both the Zalari Empire and the Terran Confederation in one final strike. Queen Xylera stood in her throne room, watching the enemy fleet appear on the holomap. Her golden eyes were calm, but her heart was heavy. She had seen what these monsters could do. Planets burned, cities turned to ash. Yet somewhere deep inside she felt something new, hope. Because she knew one human who refused to lose. Ryan Hale sat in the medical bay of his flagship, the Horizon, his body still weak from wounds. His leg was wrapped in metal braces, his arm stitched, but his eyes burned with determination. When the alarm sounded, he stood slowly, pain shooting through him. The ship's doctor tried to stop him. "You need rest, Captain." Ryan shook his head. "Rest can wait. The galaxy can't." He limped to the command deck where the crew stared in silence. Even battered and bruised, his presence filled them with courage. "Report," he ordered. Serac saluted. "Vorketh fleet incoming, 10,000 ships. They plan to attack our core worlds directly. Our fleet is barely 1/10 their size." Ryan nodded, unshaken. "Then we make every ship count." He turned to the communications officer. "Send this message to every human and Zalari ship in the Alliance. We fight together, or we die apart." The Queen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired yet proud. "Ryan," she said softly, "you shouldn't be fighting. You've already given too much." He smiled faintly. "I'll stop fighting when the galaxy stops needing it." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded. "Then we fight together. For both our worlds." The transmission ended, and the entire fleet began to prepare. Hours later, the two great armadas faced each other near the shattered moon of Zalora Prime. The silence before battle was cold and endless. Ryan stood at the front of the bridge, staring at the enemy. "They think fear makes us weak," he said quietly. "Let's show them what fear looks like when it meets a human who won't back down." The Queen's voice echoed across all channels, calm and commanding. "This is Queen Xylera of the Zalari Empire. Today we fight not as different races, but as one people, and we will not kneel." Ryan raised his hand. "All ships, engage." The stars exploded into light. The first minutes of battle were chaos. Missiles filled the sky like falling stars. Energy beams carved through fleets. Dozens of ships were destroyed on both sides. Ryan's fleet fought smart. Humans used unpredictable tactics. Sudden feints, false retreats, and traps hidden in asteroid fields. The Zalari ships, fast and powerful, struck like lightning, covering their allies. Ryan's voice never shook as he gave commands. "Pull left formation. Redirect fire. Protect the Queen's flagship." His calm tone spread confidence through every soldier. On the Queen's ship, Xylera commanded her fleet like a born warrior. The human strategies Ryan had taught her were paying off. The Zalari fought with heart, something they had forgotten long ago. Still, the Vorketh were overwhelming. Their main flagship, a monstrous fortress the size of a moon, tore through the Alliance lines. Serac shouted, "Captain, their superweapon is charging." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Then we end this now." He opened a direct channel to the Queen. "Xylera, listen carefully." "I have a plan, but it's dangerous," she frowned. "You're planning to sacrifice yourself again, aren't you?" He smiled softly. "If it saves billions, it's worth it." Her voice trembled for the first time. "No, Ryan, you've done enough. I will not lose you again." "You won't," he said. "Just trust me. Humanity has a way of turning impossible into possible." Then he ended the call before she could stop him. Ryan gathered a small strike team. Their goal: to infiltrate the enemy's flagship and destroy its reactor from the inside. His crew protested. "Captain, that's suicide." He looked at them steadily. "Maybe, but I'm human. We're stubborn that way." He entered the drop pod, sealing the hatch. The Queen's voice came through his comms, quiet and broken. "Ryan, come back to me," he replied. "I promise." The pod launched into the black void. Inside the enemy flagship, chaos awaited. The halls were filled with Vorketh warriors, tall, armored, and brutal. Ryan's team fought fiercely. Blaster fire echoed through the corridors. Even wounded, Ryan led from the front. He used every trick, every piece of training humanity had ever learned: distraction, misdirection, and courage. One by one, the enemies fell. They reached the core, a massive, glowing reactor pulsing with power. "Serac, plant the charges," Ryan ordered. "Done." Ryan checked his timer. "We have 3 minutes to escape." But as they turned to leave, a massive Vorketh warlord appeared, blocking the path. "You are human," the creature growled. "Weak, small, you cannot win." Ryan raised his blaster. "Maybe not, but humans don't quit." The fight was brutal. The warlord struck him down, but Ryan kept getting up, again and again. Blood dripped from his face, yet his eyes never lost their fire. Finally, using his last strength, he drove an explosive charge into the warlord's armor and kicked him into the reactor pit. He whispered, "For Earth, for Xylera, for everyone." Then everything went white. From orbit, the Queen saw the explosion rip through the enemy flagship. The massive ship cracked apart, fire bursting from its core. The entire Vorketh fleet faltered, their command destroyed. Cheers erupted across every channel. Humans and Zalari shouted together, their victory cry echoing through the stars. But Xylera did not cheer. Her eyes searched the screen desperately. "Find him!" she screamed. "Find Ryan Hale!" For minutes that felt like hours, there was silence. Then a small signal appeared, a tiny pod drifting among debris. The Queen covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. "Bring him to me." Hours later, in the Royal Medical Bay, Ryan opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Xylera standing beside his bed. Her usually proud expression was soft, filled with emotion. "You're alive," she whispered, voice trembling. Ryan smiled faintly. "Told you I'd come back." She laughed through tears, something no one had ever seen her do. "You are impossible, human," he chuckled weakly. "That's what makes us dangerous." Weeks passed. The war was over. The Vorketh Dominion had fallen. The Zalari Empire and Terran Confederation had become true allies. A grand ceremony was held in the capital city, where both human and alien soldiers stood side by side. Ryan Hale walked with a cane, still recovering, but every soldier saluted him as he passed. Queen Xylera stood beside him, wearing her ceremonial armor. She looked at him with quiet pride. When the speeches ended, she turned to the crowd and said, "This man, this human, showed us the meaning of strength, not the strength of body or power, but the strength of spirit. We owe our future to humanity's courage." The crowd roared in agreement. Ryan looked embarrassed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just did what anyone would do," she smiled. "No, Ryan, only a human would have done what you did." That night they stood on the palace balcony watching the stars. The sky was peaceful again. Xylera looked at him and said softly, "You changed me. You changed my people." Ryan shook his head. "We didn't change them. We reminded them what strength really means." She smiled. "And what does it mean to you?" He gazed up at the stars. "It means never giving up, no matter how dark it gets." For a long time, neither spoke. The queen rested her hand on his, and for the first time since the war began, both of them felt peace. Final scene. Years later, stories of the human captain and the alien queen spread across the galaxy. They became symbols of unity, courage, and hope. Children of both species learned their names. Soldiers repeated his words before every battle. If we fall fighting.